All right, let's talk about Eldest, man. Quick, tell me where it ends so I know where to stop. The last thing in
The
Eldest
very last
I
thing that
remember is
happens.
Aragon and Murtagh fighting, and then Murtagh leaves. Like, that's the last thing I remember.
The very last thing that happens is Aragon and Roran sit down and tell each other everything that's happened. And Aragon
kiss?
vows to go and kill the Razak with him.
And get Katarina.
Yeah,
Katrina. Right.
That's the very last thing that happens.
Right. I do think that out of the series, I don't think Eldest is the weakest of the series. I actually think Inheritance is the weakest in the series, but Eldest was still not as good as Aragon. I like the fact that we see more from Roran's point of view and the town and all that, but I just feel like they're pushing Roran to be a god, and
they're pushing Roran to be on par with Aragon.
Right, and the way his story ends out, the way his story ends, he never becomes anything more than a regular soldier on the battlefield who is a farm boy, and then all of a sudden he's the best fighter in the Varden. You know, he took out the twins, and like that doesn't it didn't make sense to me.
Yeah, that ending, we're gonna have to talk about that one.
Right. Okay.
Yeah,
so let's start at the beginning.
Start at the beginning. The book begins almost exactly where the last one left off, with
right
2 days after.
Right?
Yeah, 2 days after he comes back and realizes he's got the scar from Durza. And then Al-Jahad dies.
Mm-hmm. Murtagh and the twins are taken.
They go missing and then are later presumed dead. And then Aragon starts his journey towards Elismira.
Elismira, yeah. Yes. Okay. Now, him and Elismira, and getting there and learning, that's probably like my favorite part.
Yep.
I loved hearing about it, and like him going through training. I love it.
Yep.
So he gets the news. Al-Jahad died. I don't want to say who else. Did anybody else die?
Al-Jahad dies. Whatever guards were with him died. They presume the twins and Murtagh are dead. Mm-hmm. And then immediately afterwards, he starts to. They have the big funeral thing where Al-Jahad is buried near the dwarves, but not in the same manner as the dwarves, right, which is explained to be a big thing of honor for Al-Jahad.
Right.
And then Naswada, Aragon pledges himself to Naswada before...
Which is the first...
An out-of-the-blue thing.
Yeah, this is like the first of... if I'm not mistaken, this is the first time he pledges himself to somebody. Yes. Because like right when he got in there to the Varden, he didn't have time to pledge. He was like, oh, we gotta fight. So like he pledges himself. I feel like he would have pledged himself to Al-Jahad anyway, but he pledges himself to Naswada. And then this is the first one, because then as soon as he pledges himself to Naswada, I think he pledges himself to like 4 other people throughout this book.
He pledges himself to Naswada, and then a week later when he leaves for Dweldon Varden, Ulrich delivers the helm and the invitation from Hrothgar to become a member of Durgrimston Jedum,
which I would have accepted immediately.
So did he.
I would have been like Naswada, I'm sorry, I'm calling it here. I'm a dwarf now.
Except he swore in the ancient tongue.
I know, that's what I'm saying. Like, because throughout the whole and I really I find that to be. Maybe it was unintentional, but I found it to be a really good detail to show how immature Aragon is in the ways of politics still, because eventually he'll start pledging himself to all the factions at once. And it just shows that he's, not good with politics. He's just I'll do whatever you say.
Or a month or more, a little over a month ago, this was a farm boy from the middle of nowhere who didn't know how to read. He's gonna make some choices when it comes to politics.
Yeah. And I'm glad that he's not a genius at politics all of a sudden. I'm glad he's not just like,
he doesn't show up and is immediately good at everything he does. You're right.
Right.
Yeah.
And even Saphira, being a wise and mighty dragon, she's not, all smart.
She only saw a little bit from her egg, so she's still having to learn alongside him. Yeah.
Right. Okay, so they leave Duelden Varden, right? And they go or they head off to Elismerda.
Well, they leave Farthendur heading towards Duelden Varden.
Right, and they take... Auric goes with them.
Right? Yes, Auric and Arya travel with them. And it's just those three.
Now, when does... okay, so it's kind of slow here because they're headed towards... And then it, cuts back to Rorin.
Yes, this is the first time we'll see it. It'll cut back to Rorin because while he's traveling to... What's it called? The city. I don't remember the farthest dwarven city. But while he's traveling there is when Rorin makes his way back to Carvajal and learns that his uncle is dead and Aragon has gone missing, and then a couple of days later the army shows up. Yes.
Army shows up, and all of a sudden this town is like, I don't know, Navy SEALs, bro. All of a sudden there's no.
Well, a lot of them do die pretty quickly.
Yeah, that's true. All the unnamed characters.
It's a really hard thing because in order for... I get it. Christopher Paolini made a lot of really good decisions with this book. One of them was splitting up the attention from Aragon, because a lot of what Aragon's doing right now is either just walking around or doing the same types of training every day. And that could be a real slog. So...
Especially since we've already seen most of that in Aragon, in the book Aragon. So I like that he went back to Rorin.
It works really well as a good way to give time for Aragon to do the things that he needs to do, and it also gives us an idea of what's going back on in Carvajal at the time, to see how everybody's feeling and what's going on and all of that nonsense.
The one thing I will say, I think a missed opportunity is having a couple chapters dedicated to Naswada, because she's just now the leader of the Varden.
She shows up twice, but we only see her after they've made it to Suilra, which is the last thing he leaves before he goes to Duelden Varden, is that she's moving everybody down there so that they can actually fight the Empire.
I would have loved to see, how Naswada, comes into the role. Yeah. We don't see that. I think the next time we see Naswada, like you said, is later on. Yeah,
she's in Suilra. She's already having to work. She's already having to play politics with Orin and his men, and dealing with the internal politics of the Varden. So
has Jormander showed up?
Yeah, Jormander showed up at the... He was in the last book, but he doesn't do much.
Yeah, he was in the last book, right.
But he's introduced as one of the, I think, 5 of the Council of Elders, who tried to get Aragon to pledge to them, and then Aragon and Saphira were like, maybe we pick somebody we like more. And
see, the thing is, as a dragon rider, though, he needs to be impartial, so I don't think he should have pledged to anybody.
He does have a moment of contention
dealing
with Saphira whenever they're talking about it, because that was the biggest thing Al-Shahad had said, was Al-Shahad never wanted him to pledge himself to anybody, because then nobody could have any power over him.
Right, which
he realized if he's going to be able to fight the Empire, he needs as many allies as possible. And rather than jeopardizing his relationship with the Varden and whoever comes next, he decided to pledge himself to Naswada. Because if he didn't pledge himself to Naswada and throw in his... And throw in his vote for Naswada to lead the Varden, then that could have caused a widespread, not panic, but it could sow some dissent among the Varden. To have the Elders show up and suggest Naswada, and then Aragon either doesn't reinforce that or suggests somebody else and doesn't even pledge himself, could absolutely ruin the Varden after losing their king, having somebody who they don't really know is experienced taking the role, and then also losing a dragon rider in their eyes would be crippling for them. So he made the right choice, but it was a tough choice no matter what. And if circumstances had been any different, he ideally wouldn't have had to do that. But yeah.
Yeah.
He doesn't make a horrible choice. He makes the best choice he could have made in the circumstances. Which, having a voice of reason in Saphira helps a lot with that.
Yes, Saphira seems to... Well, when I was reading it, I always thought Saphira was kind of like pushing the not the blame or anything, but like every time Aragon would ask her a question, Saphira would like brush it off and be like, we have no choice, or something like that. Like she wouldn't really help him out. She would be like, we have no choice. Do what you think is right. Because to her, she's a dragon. She's not going to listen to these fools if she does, you know.
Yeah. Aragon's pledging himself.
Yeah, she even states, she's like, you pledged yourself. I didn't pledge myself to these fools. You know,
yeah,
I think she even says that later on.
Yeah, it comes to the point where whenever they're first talking with Naswada and Aragon gives his pledge, she tells him, like, you can pledge yourself all you want. If they start asking you to do something wrong, I'll just kidnap you.
Right.
They can't stop me.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So that's pretty interesting.
Yeah.
So we go back to Roran in the town. The soldiers show up. They're basically looking for, you know...
Yeah, them and the Razak.
Yeah, they're looking for Roran. And then Roran goes and hides off in the mountains, and then people die. It's very action-y here. Basically, the town starts to rebel. And they fight back the Razak, and then the Razak kidnap Katrina, and Sloane goes with them.
Sloane sells out
Katrina. Sloane betrays.
Yeah.
I don't think he sells out
sells
Katrina.
out
He sells
Roran
out the town.
in an effort to save Katrina, and gets both of them kidnapped.
That's when Roran basically decides, hey, we need to get out of town. We killed soldiers. They're going to come through, and they're not going to show mercy. They pick up and leave. You know, some people stay. So the majority of the town goes, and then they head off towards the spine. I might be missing some Aragon in between that, but that's basically Roran and them set out to Serta, right, to find the
towards Serta. The only thing that happens in the middle of that...
Or was it Gilead? Did they go... Because they meet up with...
They go south along the spine. And their journey is to go south along the spine, make it to Tien, and then get a boat to Sulda. Right. And Jodin, Tien. The only thing that happens in the middle of that with Aragon is... Aragon makes it to that other dwarvish city. Yeah. And a bunch of people get PO'd that he's... technically a dwarf now, because he's a member of Durgar's and Jedum.
The tallest dwarf in all the land.
Yeah. So he learns a little bit about the dwarves in that area. He learns about the dwarves' history and their religion. And then he goes across the water and makes it into Dwelden Varden.
Okay. And then they head off to...
And they cross the little river that separates the Bior Mountains from the edges of Dwelden Varden. And start their actual journey towards Eldest.
Right.
Yeah. And then Roran does all that stuff. Right. Somehow turns out to be a BA fighter. Cool.
Yeah, that's the one problem. I didn't have a problem with him being good at fighting. It just seems like throughout the book he gets better, which I guess makes sense. But then he gets to a point where he becomes like a godly fighter. Whereas
the problem is he doesn't get any better. He starts out at a skill level that should have been beyond him.
Especially since he had...
Because he's openly taking on, like, no shield or anything, openly taking on and killing multiple soldiers in open combat. Which is doable. Yeah, he's a hunter, so he's going to have some skill with combat, but these guys are supposed to be trained soldiers who are here to apprehend a fugitive.
Yeah, who have been in the army for a long time. And
it's natural he'd get lucky with a couple of kills, but he seems significantly better than he should be.
It gets to a point in one of the later books, Persinger or Eldest, I think he legit kills 104 people in one battle by himself. And I just thought that was way
Wars in open battle like that is difficult. Because...
Well, I mean... I think once he meets up with Aragon starts putting wards on him to where, which which we'll get into that later because it doesn't happen until later books. But like, it explains it a little bit better of why he hasn't died yet. Because, like, at one point, it'll describe a sword coming right at him and then missing at the last second. So I mean, Christopher Paolini has a way of bouncing back, but he also seems to be exaggerating Roran's skill here.
It's just on the cusp of believability is the problem.
I get being good. I get it. You know, being good at fighting, it could come natural to someone, but then being better than every trained soldier in the king's army, come on.
Natural talent can only carry you so far.
Right. Yeah. Anyway, they decide to leave.
Yeah.
He's got everybody, and they head to Tiem, right?
Yeah, they hop into the spine and try to make it to Tiem. During that time, Aragon makes it to Elismira. His back, if ever he does anything super strenuous, the wound from Durza causes him to go into full convulsions, and he's starting to become
and he's just
crippled,
completely dies out, which is gonna be terrible as a Dragon Raider who has to fight Galbatorix.
Yeah, it's a heavy handicap for him. They make it to Elismira.
Do they meet Eldest? It's got to be like halfway, right?
Yeah, ish.
It's like a week after they're in Elismira, right?
It's a couple of days later. As soon as Katrina gets kidnapped, it cuts back to them. Like, they get to Elismira, they meet the queen. It's revealed that Arya's the queen's daughter. And then...
This is another thing I'll point out real quick. That is kind of... Oh, I figured she was important. Yeah. I get it. It's a fantasy book, and that's kind of how it goes. But I mean, I figured. But with the show coming out, the elves specifically is why I think the show would be better as an animated show. Because, well, I mean, I don't know how I know how they would do it, but like the queen is like 1,000, right? The queen is like 1,000, but she looks the exact same age as Arya. Yeah. So I would prefer it if they did it animated, but I'm sure they could pull it off.
Yep. They meet the queen, and then like the next day, they go and they meet the Morning Sage, who is revealed to be a rider who survived Galbatorix. And the only reason he survived is because...
contacted Aragon at the end of
the one who stopped Aragon from being consumed by Durza's memories.
Yeah.
At the end of Aragon.
Which is... what's his name? What is his name, bro?
Ormus?
The G. The dragon. Ormus. And
Galadriel. No?
Nope. That ain't it.
That's the first G name that came to my mind.
Galbatorix.
Yep, Galbatorix. No, that's not it.
Yep.
It starts with a G. He's a golden dragon. We'll remember it eventually.
You're right. Glader.
Gladiator. That's it. Yes, Glader.
Glader. Yeah, and Glader is crippled. He has one.
Glader's missing one of his legs, and the Morning Sage doesn't have access to his magic.
Yeah, Animus is also crippled. They're both crippled, just like Aragon. So he needs to stop crying.
At this point, he hasn't really started crying. He's just worried that it's going to stop him from being good. And it just escalates as he begins his training with the last rider. And begins to learn all the secrets of the Dragon Riders and things of that nature.
Which I think is really interesting.
It's a really good part of the book.
Yeah. Yes, I love it when he's in Elismira training. They kind of speed up the process, though, because he doesn't have a lot of time.
Yeah, he's got to cut a lot of stuff out and cut a lot of corners. And again, while a lot of the less interesting stuff is going on, they keep hopping back to Roran. Yeah. Who makes it out of the spine and gets on a boat headed to Tiern, and then meets Jode, and then gets on a boat headed to Sulda. And that's...
and Jode was actually a pleasant surprise for me. I didn't think we would see him again, honestly. He shows up, and he's basically their get to the Varden free card.
Yes.
Which is good because they weren't going to find the Varden without him.
Joe also fills in Carvajal with what happened to Aragon and why the Razak showed up the first time.
And
which
nobody
believes.
Yeah. No, everybody
absolutely nobody buys it. Which is
Joe's
believable.
wife slips on the boat with him at the last possible second.
Yep.
So.
Yeah, there's a little bit goes on there. Joe just loves his wife and never really told her what he was doing.
Every time we've seen his wife, she hates him, bro. No.
It's because his business has been dying, and she was like a noble's daughter, and she doesn't want to be.
She didn't know that he was helping the Varden, so she thought he was just
a bad businessman
for the long time. Yeah, she just thought he was a bum, but he was helping the Varden.
Yes. And
so Galbatorix would like purposefully ruin him.
Yeah, they were purposely targeting his ships. He was losing a bunch of money on all of that, and
So and then he eventually slips on at the last minute.
Yes.
Yeah, slips on at the last minute, and they all head off to Surta. How are you saying that?
Say it like it's got an R and an L. Surta.
I just say Surta.
I know you do.
Well, I mean,
but I've never seen the word, so I don't know how it's spelled.
When I was listening to it, it sounded like he said Surta.
He adds a little bit of an L to it.
Then again, I do listen to it at 2 times speed, so it just sounds all...
Maybe don't.
Surta. No, man, I gotta get through this book. Anyway.
Okay.
So then it jumps back, and they're still training. Aragon learns that he can take the energy from things around him.
That comes a little bit later. The big things that happen before that are Aragon...
He goes to the Manoa tree. He sees the Manoa tree, right?
Yeah, he meets the Manoa tree, who he realizes wasn't always a tree. It was a lady who eventually became a tree.
Which Percy Jackson stole that.
The way elves work is, since they're so tied to magic, a lot of them will use magic to turn themselves into whatever they think the epitome of beauty is. And for that woman, it was the beauty of nature and trees and things like that. Some of them will change their forms to be a little more lithe or a little more masculine or feminine. But yeah, they're all insanely magical people.
They basically pour themselves into their hobbies as much as they can. Physically, mentally, emotionally, all of it. Was Bloodgarm introduced in this?
No.
Okay, never mind. But the Manoa tree is the prime example. This lady loved nature so much, she literally turned herself into a tree.
Yeah. He meets a couple of elves that aren't happy that the new rider is a human.
Right.
He meets the lady who forged Zarok.
Forged all the riders' blades,
Yeah. And she
has vowed to never make another blade because of
the rider's
Zarok.
betrayal.
Yeah. All that because of all the blades that she made that killed dragons. So she's like done with it.
And it's during that time that he makes an advance on Arya that goes absolutely horribly.
So, which I love it.
Yes.
I love
that naive farm boy.
Negative. But I mean, I get where Aragon's coming from. If he doesn't get sick or killed in battle, he will live forever. So the only obvious solution for him to get with someone would be an elf.
Yeah.
You know, because you don't want to watch your wife die.
Yeah.
So I get it.
Yeah, it's a very invincible thing, which I think they might have.
But also, it also comes to the point where like this is like the first girl besides Katrina who's ever given him any attention. So it's kind of like he's just a young, foolish kid.
Yeah, that one lady who tried to get him to join Dueldon Varden.
Right, and
tried to seduce him, and he was into it.
Right.
Yeah, and so Saphira had to save him.
It's just a young, stupid kid who has a crush on the hot elf chick.
Yeah.
So, and she's just like, dude, I'm like 80. She's like, no.
She shuts him down because to them he's still kind of a child.
Yeah. Which makes sense on her part.
And also, he's a writer. So even if she does get with him, anything that she does could take his attentions off of being the best that he can be.
Yeah. Like she could potentially distract him from
distracting this kid before he has to fight Galbatorix could be incredibly dangerous. So she
And
does what she
Saphira
can to...
chastises him
Yeah.
for talking about it out loud.
Yeah, Saphira chastises him. Saphira makes an advance on Gladiator.
And gets rejected.
Yeah.
And then, well, see, that's one thing that would really piss me off. Like, Saphira would be like, Aragon, you're stupid for doing all that.
And Aragon
then she
calls
would
her
do
out
the
for it, yeah.
Well, she did the exact same thing, which I like because she's also a young, stupid kid, right?
Yeah, she's
and then
young
Aragon
and...
would try to call her out, and then she would be like, "Oh, shut up, man." You know, like, I don't know. She could dish it out, but she couldn't take it.
Well, Aragon calls her out, and at first she's PO'd about it, but eventually she does open up and is like, yeah, I mean, I thought, you know, he was the last male dragon, I was the last female dragon, but apparently I was wrong.
It makes sense, you know, to Saphira, which I think later, at that point in the book, they were the last two. So
well, the only other one would have been Galbatorix's dragon.
I forget his name. It's mentioned in the last book. I forget it. But yeah, the only other one is Galbatorix's dragon, and he's out of the question. So I feel like Glader shouldn't have been too snappy with her.
Glader knows. Everybody knows
Glader
there's still 2 more eggs.
1 billion years old.
Yeah. So Glader's like, I'm not dealing with this, and also there's like a 50-50 shot that there's going to be at least 1 more male. So
right, yeah, because there are still 2.
There are still 2 unhatched dragon eggs.
Yes,
yeah.
And then
so there's that whole piece, but
Arya kind of like distanced herself from Aragon at this point.
Aragon tries to make one of the magic stone paintings and does it about Arya, and she breaks the thing in front of him and then leaves.
Wasn't it like a punk version of Arya? It wasn't exactly Arya, but it was definitely.
It was his version of her, how he thought of her. Right. And she broke it and then like fully distanced herself from him.
Yeah,
because she realized being anywhere near him could be dangerous. Yes.
It was also distracting him from his lessons.
Yeah.
And Oric was there and he was like...
Yeah, both Oric and Oramus went, ooh.
Yikes.
Sorry about it.
Yikes, bro.
Yeah. Big yikes.
So, I think at that point it cuts back to Roran, right?
Well, we've covered all of Roran up to the end of the book, essentially.
Okay.
The only other thing, there's a couple of interesting things, like Aragon is practicing swordsmanship with another elf, which means he's constantly losing and constantly being hit by convulsions, by a scar. Like, it just gets worse and worse and worse throughout the book.
That elf dude was so snooty. I hated that dude.
Yeah. He was written phenomenally, but I hate his guts.
For some reason, I put myself... Or I always see elves at a higher standard. Like, I don't know why, but I always think they just don't care and they're so calm. But then, like, I watch Lord of the Rings and they're all snooty towards the dwarves, and then I read this and they're all snooty to the humans, and I'm like, why am I putting elves on this pedestal? Like, just because they live longer? But yeah, this elf is out here. He's like, you're a bum, Aragon.
Yeah, everybody, especially the young.
Not the writer. Yeah, he's not the writer.
I don't know if he's jealous that he's not the writer. The question is, everybody's scared that Aragon is going to turn out like Galbatorix, because the last human writer they had
well, if I was treated like that by the elves, I just might.
Yeah. Yeah. But it keeps going and keeps going until the Day of the Blood Oath celebration.
Which I don't know. I'm torn there.
I like it a lot.
Where Glader and Saphira give Aragon the gift?
No, that's not what happens.
Okay, never mind.
The Blood Oath celebration is one of the big celebrations in all of Dweldenvarden, and because of the way they celebrate and how in tune they are with magic, if a normal person shows up, they just go instantly mad. So Aragon is constantly being watched by Aragon and Oric are constantly being watched by Ormus, and at one point Ormus even like takes him aside and is like, "Yo, clear your head. You're starting to freak out."
Oh yeah, and he had to write that poem, right, or something like that.
Yes, because at the Blood Oath celebration, everybody gives something of themselves in celebration of nature and the oath between dragons and riders. Yeah,
Mardi Gras, baby.
So Aragon writes a poem, which essentially is just his story. of
Yeah,
how he's supposed to turn from nobody into the guy who kills Galbatorix.
And the elves are kind of like, oh, we'll put that in our
and they genuinely accept it, and it's weird to see
very good.
After a lot of
very
people
good,
have been
distant to him. I think it's a really good. They're like, because they have him read it twice.
They have him read it twice, and the reason is because up until then, people had just seen him as the regular dude,
farm boy,
human,
and they didn't know what he
who was the next writer. And after hearing that, they all get an idea of what's going through his mind and the pressures that are put on him. And so a lot of people go, oh, wait, this is just a dude.
Right. He has been through a lot as well.
Yes. And then it ends with the most well-handled nude scene of all time, which is the ladies with the dragon tattoo, which is handled masterfully.
Were the three ladies?
It's two with the dragon tattoo. Yes.
The girl with the dragon tattoo.
The girls with the dragon tattoos. Yes. There's two ladies who have a big dragon tattoo along their back, and then they start this whole, well, not just along their back, around their whole body, and they start this whole dance song thing with all the other musicians in Ellesmere. And then at the end of it, the dragon comes to life and like separates itself mostly from their bodies, and then touches Aragon and essentially gives him this idea like, hey, you're the last hope for dragons, and we're going to give you everything we can to make this work. And when Aragon wakes up, the scar is gone, all of the pains are gone, and he's finished his transformation from human into a rider.
Yeah, and
because being so in touch with a dragon naturally changes a person to be more like a dragon, and that's why the elves look so different than regular humans. And he was turned into the same, or a lesser extent of that.
Yes, so he's like, at this point, because it says his ears are sharper, his eyes are more slanted, he has better strength, better stamina. He's basically
he can see in the dark.
A lesser,
he is on par with elves now.
Yeah.
But he also has, he still has some of his human things, like his face is a little bit more burly, he can still grow facial hair, stuff like that.
Yeah, and it's a very good, way for him to overcome the scar on his back.
And I love so much.
Not make Murtagh.
And I love that so much because rather than making it this like big thing that he overcomes, what's it called? Like Christopher Paolini, I'm not disabled, so I don't know what it's like to lose an arm and to have to work without something that you had for so long, But the way he treats it, it's not like this celebration of Aragon coming back into his full self. Aragon breaks down and openly weeps for a while because this thing that had harried him for so long is gone. And that lifts such a weight off of his shoulders.
Yeah,
he never treats it like coming back to his full self. He treats it like putting away what was the old him and becoming a new person because of it.
Right, because he doesn't just talk about his convulsions. He talks about shedding off.
He's lost all of his old scars. Yeah. He is no longer human.
He's fresh, none of his scars are there. Yes. He's basically gets a fresh slate here.
Yeah.
And then after the Blood Oath celebration, I think he trains for a little bit and then they leave. Yes. Right? Or does he leave right after?
It's within a week of the Blood Oath celebration. He scries, because Arya left immediately afterwards, and he does a little bit more training, and then he scries on Naswara.
Didn't he try to talk to Arya at the Blood Oath or something?
Yes, he talks to Arya at the Blood Oath, at the end of the Blood Oath celebration after becoming the new version of him, and is like, hey, I'm an elf kind of now. And she, again, mad props to Christopher Paolini, now that the main character is hot and strong, she still denies it.
She's like, nah, bro. I knew you when you were human.
Yeah, I knew you when you were human, and also, you still have work to do.
Right.
Once you're done with that, maybe come back and talk to me. Yeah, and then Arya leaves for the Varden. And then within a week, he scries Naswara and learns that there's an attack coming, and talks with Ormus and the Queen. and gets the gifts, and then goes back to the Varden with Auric. Yeah. And then he ends the second book the same way he ended the first book, with a big ol' fight.
Big old battle.
Yeah.
The twins are there, and they're helping.
Yes. Angela shows back up, and she's dope.
Again.
Yeah.
Easy.
A really, really interesting thing is, what's it called? A bunch of Coles show up and ask to help the Varden because they're PO'd that they got possessed by Durza.
And I love that.
It's such a beautiful thing.
That's my favorite.
Yes.
That's one of my favorite things, that they show up and they're like, hey, we're sorry, dude. That wasn't us. We want our life back, and Galbatorix just ain't it.
Not only is that not us, Aragon had to learn a ton about the Urgals during his training. And so during the whole conversation between this one Cole who came to offer the message of peace and to help the Varden, Aragon is like constantly translating some of his motions and actions to Naswada to try and explain what's going on. And the whole time Aragon is PO'd because he hates the Urgals. He blames him for every bad thing that's happened to him. But when he actually gets to meet this Cole and then later looks through their minds to make sure...
Garzvog, right? Garzvog?
Yeah, Garzvog. Garzvog and a couple of his buddies get set up as like Aragon's personal guard, along with a bunch of dwarves.
And
so he looks through their minds to try and see that
everybody hates the Urgals still.
Yes. Everybody still hates the Urgals, even Aragon, and then he looks through their minds to try and figure out like if they have any bad intentions or anything like that. And then Aragon realizes, oh wait, they're just people. Like he sees them growing up, he sees how they act, he sees how they talk to each other. And that's when he fully realizes all the stuff that he had been learning, which is that, yeah, the Urgals are a violent race, but that's how they understand the world, is through violence. They're not fighting people around them because they hate them, they're fighting people around them because that's how they figure out what other people are around.
Yeah, and that's how they prove themselves
in
their tribe.
Yes, and that garnered them so much hate from everybody else that now so many Urgals are just confined to one area and they have to fight to survive. Because if they don't fight to survive, they'll just be eradicated. And that's when Aragon fully has to come to the realization that, yeah, they're different and they've done bad things, but so has he. And maybe they're not all bad. And that's a really, really good. It's handled so well, that transition.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then the big fight happens between what they think to be 100,000 of the Empire and the like 10,000 of the Varden.
Right. And then
Aragon starts using some of his mad sorcerer powers. Like, he's learned the 12 words of death, which cost him as much energy as lifting a finger, so he could wipe out scores of people who aren't protected by mages. And then...
Yeah, he's in charge of the, what is the mages in...
What's it called?
The Black Hand? The Red Hand?
No, it's the Wandering Path. I think it's Dwelled Varden. No, not Dwelled Varden. Shoot, it starts with a
He's in charge of the group of mages that are in...
Duvranger Garta, that's it.
Duvranger
the Wandering Path.
He's not in charge of them because they asked him to be in charge.
He's taken charge of them. All he's doing is commanding. He's not leading them. Yes.
Yeah, for the battle, he's taken charge.
Yes. The battle starts to
wiping
turn
out the enemy mages.
The battle starts to turn against the good guys, and then the dwarves show up, and then the battle starts to turn again when the twins and another dragon rider show up. But it's not Galbatorix.
And that's when we see Thorn and Murtagh.
Yes.
Now, when it comes to names, I think Thorn is kind of weak.
It's the worst dragon name. Come on,
you got names like Murtagh, Galbatorix, Saphira, Aragon,
Glader,
Thorn,
freaking
Thorn, Onimus.
Galbatorix's dragon's name, which is...
Look it up.
I'm looking at it. Shuriken. That's it. Shuriken. Yeah. Hadouken. And then he names his freaking dragon Thorn.
Thorn is kind of lame.
Yeah. And this is, honestly, for such a good book, this is the weakest part.
The ending here is kind of weak.
Yeah, like, the people of Carvajal have showed up, and they're starting to fire, like, ballistas off the edge of their boat into the crowd of soldiers trying to help out the Varden. But Murtagh, with less training and a significantly younger dragon, is apparently...
wipes the floor.
Well, yeah, Aragon's... Yeah, he wipes the floor, and the problem is, like, yeah, I get it, Aragon's tired at this point, he's been fighting for a while, but doesn't...
He's still got that elvish stuff in him, bro.
Yeah, he's got the elvish stuff in him, and that doesn't excuse how Murtagh has some, like, BA, no energy, costing magics. Like, he snipes Hrothgar out of the air with the spell that should have absolutely drained him due to the distance.
Aragon's got that belt.
Yeah,
too, right?
The belt is the only reason that he's alive at the end of the battle, because he's been constantly taking energy from that. And he even takes an energy from, like, a dead horse. He takes a little bit of it to fight Murtagh and Thorn, and they still lose. Like, Saphira is covered in armor, and yet all of her blows are just, like, bouncing off of Thorn's hide for no reason. Aragon gets into a fight with Murtagh, and somehow isn't strong enough to take him down, after Murtagh has done dope magic crap.
Right, which,
Yeah, and then Murtagh busts out more dope magic crap that still doesn't drain him.
And then they stand there, and then they watch Roran kill...
Yeah, and then the twins show up and start, like, absolutely wrecking everybody because they're almost unstoppable. And then Roran sneaks up on them, and they see him at one point, and they're like, oh no, it's just a pile of dead bodies. And then he kills both of them.
Right, this is where I have troubles with Roran, because he's...
There's no way he would have been able to hide from the twins.
He's killed soldiers before, which is believable. But the twins, who are constantly, using their minds to...
Yeah. To sense everybody. The same thing Aragon is doing, who's constantly sensing everybody around him. There's no way he's sneaking up on them.
Yeah, and then kills one. The other one should have obliterated him on the spot.
Well, the problem is, they were tied they're tied like dragons and riders. So whatever happens to one, that pain also transfers to the other. So by killing one, yeah, he incapacitates the second one for long enough to strike him. But he never should have had the chance to strike the first one. Like, you can't even chalk that up to hubris, essentially.
And then, I love how Murtagh was just like, let's just see what happens.
Well, Murtagh pledged to try to capture him and Saphira. He also pledged to try to win the battle.
But he did not pledge to keep the twins out of harm's way. So
he never pledged for the twins, and he does not care about them.
Yeah, he's just like, let's just see what happens.
Murtagh also reveals that he's given Galbatorix his true name and sworn oaths, which means he has no choice but to serve Galbatorix.
Yeah, he has no choice but to serve.
Until Galbatorix dies or releases him, he has no choice but to serve him.
He reveals that him and Aragon are brothers.
Yes, it's revealed that he and Aragon are brothers, that Morzan was Aragon's father. Mm-hmm. And then he takes the freaking Zarok
takes
back.
Zarok back.
Yeah.
Which is good because it matches Thorn.
That, again, I mean, come on, you guys.
He's a thorn in the Varden's side.
He'll be a thorn in the side of our enemies. Like, still? That's the best you got?
Right, I guess. He could have even used the ancient language.
Yes, he could have used...
called him Thorn in the ancient language or whatever. That would have sounded better, but whatever. This is the weakest part of the book, that last chapter, but...
The battle was fine up until that happened. It's just tough. It really is.
I mean, it's kind of hard to...
It's just hard.
He had to kill the twins, but Aragon was incapacitated, so who else is going to do it?
Yeah.
I think Arya might have been a better choice.
Yeah, Arya would have been the only one capable of, like, hiding herself from the twins. But even then, she doesn't do it. They push it on Roran. Which,
I don't know.
Just the whole thing, the fight with Murtagh. Murtagh expends, like, no energy to lock both him and Saphira, like, in place. I don't know. Like...
that's explained later, so...
Even then, like, that doesn't change the fact that his energy should have been 0. Because Aragorn tries to fight it and pushes him to the limit, and then nothing happens. Which...
Okay. Yeah, I mean, and then they leave because they're... I don't know. I don't remember why they left.
They left because they promised to try to capture them. And he said that, I'll let you go this time, but don't let us fight again because I'll have to swear more oaths.
Because they're like, I have to swear more oaths. Yeah, which, I mean, this is why I like Murtagh. He's not a bad guy.
Yeah, he's just forced to do horrible things.
Yeah, even in this fight, he's not a bad guy. He's like, you know what? I tried my hardest. I'm out of here. Yeah. When he had Aragorn right there, he could have taken him right then and there, but he's...
I also don't get why Aragorn doesn't... Aragorn could win so many things and push so many people on the back foot by just starting to say words that would kill him and Saphira. Because their thing is, they have to keep Saphira alive, and they have to keep Aragorn alive. So if Aragorn starts chanting something that's going to kill him and Saphira, like, they have to give it to his demands. Otherwise, they lose the one thing they need.
That just doesn't seem like a good idea.
Like, the problem is, like, Aragorn has the ultimate bargaining chip, which is him and his dragon.
You need us. Yeah, you need us.
And yet, he never once tries to use that to his advantage.
Well, you gotta think he's still a kid.
Yeah, he's still a kid, but he should be able to see that. He gets told that over and over and over again. Like, they cannot kill them because it's revealed that Saphira is the last female dragon. So if she dies, all dragons die.
Eventually.
Yeah, they'll just die out because they won't have it. They won't have any more tamed kids. I just don't get why he doesn't start anything or at least threaten it. Like,
I'll kill myself right now.
Yeah, like he knows the only way, like, wizard duels are the most dangerous because it's almost impossible to kill another wizard without letting them have the opportunity to kill you in return. So if he starts chanting something, they've either got to give in to his demands or take a serious look at the situation. Because if he finishes the spell, either he dies and the enemy dies, or he kills the enemy and doesn't die. Like, those are the only two options. Because he knows enough of the ancient language to build a spell. He knows significantly more than Murtagh does, because there's no way Murtagh could have caught up to him when he's learning it from actual elves. So he could have built a spell that it sounds like it's going to kill him, but breaks just before that happens. And yet doesn't. Never once tries it.
Yeah, because I think Aragorn... the one thing we didn't talk about was the blessing he put on that child. You remember that?
Yeah, Elva,
yeah, I don't like that girl. Anyway,
yeah, he misspoke during that, and then whenever he shows back up to the Varden, he offers to undo his curse.
It's got to be like way later though, because he's got to learn how to undo it.
He already knows how to undo it whenever he gets back to the Varden, but he doesn't realize until he starts talking with Ormus that he cursed the child instead of blessed them because he used the language wrong.
Right. And then and now he knows more after being with the elves and everything. It's just,
now he knows
that's just
enough,
an example to show his growth, you know?
Yeah, he knows, like, he very specifically, Ormus teaches him multiple ways to set up a spell so that it'll drain as much energy as possible but not kill him.
Right.
Like, so, I don't know, man.
Immediately after the battle,
Aragorn
sits down
the
with
part
Roran,
that pisses me off so much is Roran walks up to him and treats him like he's still his little brother, that they're on equal footing, and that Aragorn owes him something. Like, he even punches Aragorn in the mouth, and I'm like, okay.
Let me ask you a question though, bro. If Jacob was a dragon rider tomorrow, bro, or you saw
that's
Jacob,
not gonna work.
Human. Next time you see
That's not
Jacob,
gonna work. It would have to be you.
Okay, next time we haven't seen each other in like 2 years.
Yeah.
All of a sudden I come down there and I'm a dragon rider. Are you gonna treat me any different? Are you gonna treat me like your best friend / brother?
Yeah, I'm gonna treat you like my best friend, but I'm not gonna blame you for anything that wasn't your fault, even though
I don't.
It's been explained to me that it's not your fault.
I definitely don't like the blame.
Yes.
But I do like that he's not treating him different. I do like that he's not like, oh, great dragon rider. You know, he's like, you're my brother. I grew up with you. But I do not like.
Yeah.
him blaming.
I get
because,
that.
I mean,
It's the disrespect with which he acts towards him. Because not only does he
'cause
blame him, but he also like openly punches him. And Aragon
gotta
could have
think, man.
absolutely had him killed for that.
If Aragon was still at the village at the time the soldiers come, the soldiers would have killed everybody.
Yeah.
Man. Aragon leaving was the best choice. And
Yeah, and Roran refuses to understand that.
he's just
Yeah.
mad because Katrina got captured. That's it. If they had gone away with Katrina, he wouldn't have been as mad. I guarantee it.
Yeah. And
But
that part
they tell each
just makes
other-
me so upset.
They tell each other everything.
Yeah, they tell each other
They
everything.
accept each other as brothers again.
Yeah.
For some reason.
And then it's cool because Aragon says, I didn't have a choice in Garrow dying. And Roran's like, yeah, okay, that makes sense now that you've said it for the fifth time.
Yeah. Now that you've told me.
Gosh.
You're right. And so it sets up to where Aragon agrees to go help.
Yeah,
Roran
Aragon still
go
has
get Katrina.
like a blood oath against
pledges-
the Razak. So he's like,
himself-
cool, I've got
pledges
reason for it
himself
now.
to
Let's take him
Roran
down.
in language. He pledges himself to Roran in the ancient language.
Does he?
No, I'm just,
Oh.
I would put it past.
Yeah, I wouldn't know.
But yeah, they go, and then that's where that book ends.
For such a good book, it ends. The last two chapters are just not as good as the rest. And that hurts.
Truly.
Yeah. I would have rather Galbatorix showed up and was like, cool, dope. Since you're not going to join me, I'll let you go. But don't try it again. Like, because that's more believable. Like, Galbatorix can't force a true name out of him. Galbatorix also can't risk killing them. So if Galbatorix had been at the battle and then they'd fought and Galbatorix was like, you're learning a lot, kid, but I'm going to have you sooner or later, and then left, I would have believed that more than Murtagh is a better fighter and better dragon rider, and his dragon is on par with Saphira.
Yeah.
Like,
or more.
well, that's the thing, is like, Thorn is smaller, but Thorn is shown to be like on par in combat with Saphira, which is the wackest part of that to me.
Yeah.
All in all, great book, ends rough. Other than that, it's good. 9 out of 10.
Well, yeah, it was really good, and I see where Christopher Paolini's coming from. You know, he's got to set up. If Aragon could just easily beat Thorn, that wouldn't leave. Oh well, he could beat him. I mean, I get it. He should have beaten him, but like now there's a mystery. Why is Thorn and Murtagh than Aragon? You know.
Well, even
all
if they had beat him, they could have just ran.
Right.
Like, they could have just talked for a little bit while Thorn and them were running away because Aragon can't abandon the battle, otherwise the Varden would have lost. And then he could have delivered the message of, oh, yeah, we're brothers, by the way. But, I don't know, it's a choice.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's Eldest.
That was Eldest. Yeah, thanks for listening to the official book report.
Yeah. All right, bye.